Hello and welcome to Retro Racing Reviews, where this week we're taking a look at the Ferrari 312 family, specifically the Ferrari 312T, and this car competed from 1975 until 1980 in various updates. So we're starting off in 1973 with the Ferrari 312B, just to give you a bit of background to why the T model was developed and what it later went on to accomplish. The 312 series originally started off in the late 1960s, and this is now the B3 variant. You'll see that it does bear a striking resemblance to the Lotus 72, which I've covered previously, and Ferrari realistically were trying to keep up with the innovative pace of Lotus and other teams who were adopting the design, specifically McLaren with their M23 variant. Now, this version of the 312B was not the most successful and eventually led to Ferrari sitting out some of the later races of the 73 season. The driver here is Jackie Ickx, who actually, when he was told Ferrari weren't going to be competing in some of the key rounds of the championship, specifically the Nürburgring, decided to, well, quite frankly, take his ball and go home, and went and grabbed a McLaren for the Nürburgring and finished third in that particular race. So you'll see it doesn't really inspire with confidence trying to drive this round. However, don't take it from me, take it from Niki Lauda.
Terrible. Drives like a pig.
Oh, you can't say that.
Why not?
It's a Ferrari!
It's a shitbox.
It understeers like crazy and the weight distribution is a disaster. It's amazing, all these facilities and you make a piece of crap like this.
I would just like to point out that there is a small continuity error in there. Lauda originally joined Ferrari in 1974, so he'd be driving this car, the Ferrari 312 B3 74 update. This was a significant revision to the B3, as you can see from just looking at it. Much more successful. However, the underpinning of the B3 just really wasn't going to take Ferrari forward in the long term, but it did enable Lauda to take his first Grand Prix win in the 74 season, and was certainly a lot more competitive, and Ferrari did complete a full race programme that year. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Ferrari, on the whole, don't tend to make very good Grand Prix cars. They get it right once in a while. 1990, for example, very, very good Grand Prix car, and certainly a few of them in the Schumacher era. But what they really need is a top driver who is prepared to work around the faults with whatever they've turned out to get them competitive. Fernando Alonso did this quite recently, could have won a couple of world titles had things fallen differently. Schumacher certainly did it. I've seen Schumacher drive some Ferraris that are absolutely unbelievably bad. Certainly in 1996, where he took 3 Grand Prix in a car that never should have been anywhere near the front of the grid, and Lauda back in the 70s. Certainly, by the time you get to the first variant of the 312T, which we're seeing here, when he won the title in 1975, the whole of Ferrari had very much gone and become something far more efficient and equipped to win races. Luca de Montezemolo was the team principal. Lauda was the primary driver, having taken over from Clay Regazzoni in that respect. Regazzoni, very good driver, but didn't have the same kind of drive that Lauda had to succeed and to push Ferrari forward with him. Now, the 312T very much established Lauda as a superstar and very much the man to beat. Taking this car for a trip round Silverstone, it immediately feels so much more sorted out than the B variants that I was driving earlier. You can actually slide this through the corners. It does feel a lot better to drive, and certainly, although the lap times that I was able to put in with this are roughly comparable to the B spec, maybe a little bit quicker. I certainly had to work a hell of a lot harder to try and accomplish those with the cars from 73 and 74, although the 74 one was a lot better in that respect. So moving on from this, the car was upgraded into the T2 spec for the following couple of seasons, 1976, which is what we're going to have a look at now, and 1977. Now, you may well know what this car looks like more than almost any other Formula 1 car apart from the ones that are competing over the last few years, specifically because this was made into, well, this was one of the stars, I should say, of the film Rush, which was based on the 1976 season primarily, and the rivalry between Niki Lauda and James Hunt. Now, what was quite interesting was that the cars that they were driving were effectively adaptations and improvements on models that you'd had previously developed over a number of years. The B3 morphed into the T and then the T2, and the McLaren in the M23 configuration had originally won the title with Emerson Fittipaldi in 1974. Again, you may recall from my review of the 72 that Fittipaldi had several very successful seasons with Lotus, but then moved to McLaren because he thought that Colin Chapman was going down a blind alley in a number of respects, and he wanted to be undisputed team number one. He was right. He actually got the title in 74 with the McLaren M23, and that car continued to be developed and came into this series very much the equal of the T2 in a lot of respects. And it ended up with, although Lauda lost the title in the final race, he probably would have won had he not had that accident at the Nürburgring, which took him out of a number of races where Hunt was able to score big points in his absence. However, the M23 definitely challenged Ferrari's dominance that year. In 1977, Lauda was back and at full fitness, and the car really wasn't developed all that much from what it turned out to be later in the 76 season. So primarily a lot of the development that year was around tyres. Certainly the Michelin tyres did get a lot of upgrades in performance to try and keep abreast of the changes in ground effect that Lotus were developing at about the same time. This was the Lotus 77 primarily that was going to be the thing to beat, even though the Ferrari definitely had the edge on power. Lauda took his second title and stepped aside for the final couple of races of the season simply because he was sick of Ferrari and sick of driving around in circles, as he put it, although he wouldn't retire for the first time for another couple of years. He handed over the reins at Ferrari to Gilles Villeneuve. Now, Villeneuve was never the number one driver until the very end of his career, where you could argue that there were joint number ones between him and Didier Pironi, but certainly the Tifosi took Villeneuve to their hearts more than they ever did with Carlos Reutemann, Jody Scheckter and Pironi himself. Now, this is the T3 spec model, which was campaigned in 1978. Now, personally, I do quite like the look of this. I know that the white stripe right down the front of the car doesn't necessarily float everybody's boat, but certainly in terms of the look of the thing, it just looks like a Grand Prix car. It's angular and it's dynamic, and I think it looks absolutely fantastic. Certainly it's difficult between this and the 77 version of the T2 as to which one of these is my favourite Ferrari of that particular era. However, Villeneuve would only truly become associated with the next car in this list, which is going to be the Ferrari 312 T4. This car came out for the 1979 season, which saw Reutemann move on to pastures new, and for Villeneuve to be partnered with the South African driver Jody Scheckter. Now Scheckter was ostensibly the #1 driver, and indeed due to his results in the early part of the season, due to the split scoring system F1 had at the time, meant that he was very much not only the #1 driver but the best candidate for trying to take the title. Villeneuve and Alan Jones in the Williams staged a titanic battle throughout the second half of the season, and both of them outscored Scheckter heavily, which meant that by the time we got to Monza for the season finale, both Villeneuve and Jones could, still in theory, win the title. Villeneuve was instructed to sit behind Jody Scheckter throughout that race, and dutifully did so when he probably could have overhauled Scheckter to win himself. And obviously, we don't know whether Villeneuve ever really regretted that. It was something that he was very much the rookie and the junior driver in that regard. So you can understand why he was asked to do so and why he probably thought his time would come at a later stage. However, this is the car that Villeneuve drove around on 3 wheels with when his tyre exploded during the Dutch Grand Prix. And it was also the car he was driving during his epic duel with René Arnoux at the French Grand Prix in Dijon, which, if you watch that online and just listen to Murray Walker's commentary, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And I believe Mario Andretti just summed it up by saying, nothing special, just 2 young lions clawing at each other. For 1980, the Ferrari had been upgraded into T5 spec and was really coming to the end of its useful life. It had never been designed as a ground effect car, but the Ferrari turbo power had always kept the car competitive, and it needed a driver with the level of genius of Villeneuve to make the thing work. And by this stage, you had everybody copying Lotus, not for the first time, and producing sophisticated ground effect cars such as the Ligier of that era, and the Williams, which came on strong in this season. So overall, not the most successful variant of the 312T, but you can broadly see it's very much the predecessor of the car from the year before. And in 1981, they got Harvey Postlethwaite on board to design a new series of cars with which Villeneuve won some of his most spectacular races, primarily at Monaco the following year, when a car that really wasn't designed for it took the win. But that's a story for another day. So just remains for me to say thank you very much for watching once again, and see you next time. Thanks. Bye.